military panel, retired Lieutenant Colonel Danny Davis, a senior fellow at Defense Priorities, Iowa Senator Joni Ernst, member of the Senate Armed Services Committee and Army combat veteran. Joey Jones is here, retired Marine bomb tech and Fox News contributor, along with KT McFarland, former national security advisor under President Donald Trump. Well, I tell you, it doesn't matter where we start, but I do want to start today with China. That number, when we got to 232 times greater capacity to build ships China's Navy has than our U.S. Navy, you had a reaction.
I did, because it's like that. It's like they think they're going to need them or something. They're putting a lot of effort ahead of time into that. And look, the issue for the United States is not just that we don't have enough ships. We don't have enough manpower to man the ships. Right. Even if we got the capacity, we don't have enough manpower to man them. And that's maybe a bigger issue.
Yeah, and, you know, everybody just kind of jump in here. Joey Jones, the only branch that met its recruiting requirements were the Marines.
Yeah, the Marine Corps, in 2023, the Marine Corps met it by 21 bodies, so good for them. I could talk about why I think that is. When I joined the military, the Army promised me a college degree. The Air Force promised me an occupation after service. The Navy promised me travel. The Marine Corps said, we don't think you have what it takes, but you can try. And I think that's the difference. I have a quote here from the acting commandant speaking to Congress, to the Senate, saying, your Marine Corps exists to fight and win our nation's battles, the same fierce competitive spirit to win no matter the challenge. That is the mentality that will bring men and women to the military. They need to feel challenged. If you're bringing the bar down to them, what's the difference in going to college or the military? Why not feed into the American spirit rather than just believe it's gone? And on the China stuff, I have more to say there, but I'll leave it.
And actually, I want to jump on that because when I joined the Army back in 1985 as a private, I mean, they offered some things like the college fund or whatever. That was nice, but I wanted to be able to step up and to be able to do the right thing. And they were hard on us back then. It's not the case today, and I think that's why fewer people are joining.
Yeah, if I can share as well, I think we all join for different reasons. But if you look at why recruiting is failing abysmally right now, is because we have an administration that, instead of focusing on the things that Joey just mentioned, the lethality and making sure that we have the mightiest military on the face of the planet, we have an administration that's entirely focused on ideology and green climate. We need electric vehicles in the military now. I'm sorry, I drove those roads in Iraq, and there were no charging stations to be found.
Well, one thing I'll say is, yes, this administration, if you handed them a hot potato, they let it ruin in their hands. But I talked to Amber Smith, and a lot of you know who she is. She's an Army veteran. She was working in the Trump administration for the DOD as a spokesperson 5 years ago on a podcast. And she said recruitment was the greatest threat to our country, not an enemy, but our ability to keep our military. This is a multi-generational, bipartisan problem. If you ask me, it goes back to a country that's so spoiled that's rested on its laurels. We look at how we focused on counterinsurgency for 20 years and said, the Pacific, they're fine. They can just have a party in Hawaii. Well, now the Marine Corps won't be stood up for its future capabilities till 2030, but they just sold off artillery. They just sold off our tanks to pay for it. So Congress looks at them and says, you need to fix your capability. And the commandant at the time, Berger, goes and says, well, here's how we can pay for it. We're going to sell all this off and get rid of that so we can be ready to fight on islands in the Pacific. It's just going to take us 7 years to get there, and we're going to sell them off today.
You can turn it around very quickly. When I joined the Reagan administration, we were in the same position. We had ships that couldn't sail because they didn't have parts. We had pilots that didn't have enough training hours to fly. For every tank we had that could work, we had one right next to it that we had to use for spare parts. Reagan turned it all around. He had a Reagan defense buildup. He went to the areas that we were behind in military capabilities. He also put that spirit back into the hearts of the American people.
So how did he do that?
First of all, he loves America, right? And he increased their pay. He increased defense spending on all the major areas. He had technology advancements. But then most of all, he made people really proud to wear the uniform. When I went to the Pentagon,
that's the key.
You were not allowed to wear the military uniform in Washington, D.C. because it looked, it was after Vietnam. It looked, too tough, too military. So
and I can
At the
tell you,
Pentagon, which is military.
Yeah, so anyway, so everybody.
I came in during that time. I
You
joined in
probably
that time.
couldn't even
and that's,
fit in your uniform because what happened was we found all these guys who were wearing their uniforms. None of them fit anymore because they hadn't worn them in years.
But
we
it did.
turned it
But
around.
Reagan did. I mean, he inspired people to want to join and to be proud to be an American, to put your life on the line potentially for your country. And nearly everybody I joined up with did the same thing. So there was a lot of pride and a lot of high standards.
Let's
can
get
turn
into
it
what
around.
China is doing. And CNN was reporting this. Others have reported through communications from the Taiwanese government. So the Kinmen Islands sit closer to China than they do actually to Taiwan as a nation. But Taiwan, those are their outer islands. China has been surrounding those islands. And recently, according to published reports, surrounded and boarded a tourist boat. They searched everybody. It wasn't clear if they would make it off that boat. I mean, imagine being on it. Why is China getting aggressive now? I mean, that is hands-on. Can you imagine being
They're doing the same thing with fishing vessels. So what China's doing is they want to show the world, particularly Taiwan, Japan, Korea, the U.S., we have the capability of taking Taiwan anytime we want. That's why they're having these more and more aggressive military exercises, because they don't want to fight. They just want to show you we can do it. And then, when there's a moment of opportunity, then they work out with Taiwan. Well, do you really want to go to war? You can't win a war with us. All of the American wargaming shows we don't win a war with Taiwan unless we go nuclear.
I think I recognize that. It's called actual deterrence.
It's called real deterrence. It used to work. It doesn't work now.
Yes, and I would say China will continue to probe in that area, but they will also continue to impede freedom of navigation through the South China Sea. They will continue to engage, and they will see exactly how far they can go before they get an American reaction. They're going to continue on this path. They are going to stay at it.
The most frustrating part of this is nothing about this is new. China's acted this way, provocative, pushing buttons for decades, since before I was on this country or in this world. And so I look back and I think, how could we not solve the Iran problem for 8 presidents? How can we not have an answer for China having literally fought a war in the Pacific and understanding the necessity of it? Now we're trying to catch up. We look at something like supersonic missiles. That is a capability that will be necessary in the future. Right. China has them. Russia has them. The U.S., a decade out at best. We look at our Navy. I mean,
wait. Let's hold on. Why don't we have them?
We can't test them. We didn't put any money in it, okay?
There you
so
go.
the Chinese and the Russians are hypersonic weapons. It's a big missile gap. What were we doing? We were fighting forever wars in the Middle East. We didn't need to fight.
Exactly right.
So everybody else caught up with us and passed?
Like I said
they're
earlier,
way ahead of us.
we were so focused on counterinsurgency operations from boot camp forward through the Pentagon that we weren't focused on these things. And it makes me worry. This is Congress, in my opinion, walking, chewing gum. They like to. I don't see that happen a lot. We didn't do it at the Pentagon either. We didn't fight a war and prepare for a war at the same time. Perhaps they didn't have the money. They've never passed an audit. So I think they have all the money in the world.
Wow.
I think they need to do a better job at where they spend.
But the hypersonic weapons is a really big deal.
It is.
Because we don't have a defense against it.
Right.
We don't have the weapons to deter them. And if a conflict were to happen...
Do any of our allies?
Nobody has them. Russia, China...
Only the enemies.
We don't have them. Only the bad guys.
Okay, that sounds like...
a missile gap.
Not just a missile gap, it sounds like mission urgency. Like
It
what?
is.
10 years out.
Really
Even more so,
is.
Harris, we don't have the capability to cripple China by taking their grid out in a moment, but they have that over us.
So we had a great discussion this past week. We had the commander of Strategic Command based out of Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska in front of our Armed Services Committee this last week. We talked about those capabilities that should exist within our nuclear triad. And it's pretty alarming what you will hear even in open testimony coming from the commander on those areas of shortfall that we have. So here comes the political conundrum where you've got folks on the very far left and some even on the right that don't want to build up our military defenses. And these are defensive weapons to counter nuclear tactics coming from other nations. and to provide for our own cover. We are unwilling as a public right now and through representation in Congress to put the money where our mouth is. We absolutely need to do that for the defense of our
And
nation.
if I could say what compounds that for being a problem or for being a solution is that we want to do everything all over the place. We want to stay forever in the Ukraine war. We want to keep our
So
troops
that was my next question, because I want to get to that. Look, when Americans hear, oh, we need more money for the Pentagon, we need more money, but we are actually deployed in several places and now taking incoming, like they ask, well, what was the money for? Now we're getting hit.
Yeah.
Talk to me about Ukraine. And that, again, is where the money issue comes up. What is the bottom line?
No, but it also is where the equipment issue is, because we are drawing down from our own forces to give to Ukraine.
Yeah, right. We have given, according to DOD statistics, over 5,000 military vehicles alone from the United States. And that's on top of the millions of rounds of ammunition that have been going on, the missiles, the air defense interceptors, all of those things
Can we
which we would
continue
need.
that?
No, we can't continue that without seriously degrading our ability to defend ourselves if we get into a sustained
Here's the
war.
problem, if I may step in.
What you said, though, Joey, just real quickly, it would take more than money. It takes time.
Exactly.
So the
It is
consensus
exactly
is
right.
the consensus is the money they want to send to Ukraine is 1% of our defense spending, and it's presented to us. That's a heck of a deal. 1% of our defense spending is going to go to Ukraine, and it's going to take the Russian threat away from us, and we'll be in a better place. That's a good deal. Well, I can get a good deal on a Volkswagen Beetle, but if I need a truck, that good deal on a Volkswagen Beetle doesn't help me. And you want to know how much.
Who's the truck and who's the VW in that scenario?
And you want to know how much 1% matters? Go to Congress and tell them to increase defense spending by whatever they have baked in NDA plus 1% and see how much arguing happens. So when it's billions of dollars, 1% still matters. I mean, 1% would fix the Marine Corps problem a lot quicker than 8 years, but we can't get that money right now.
So the other thing is the 1% doesn't mean Ukraine wins.
Exactly.
The 1% is just to hold it where it is.
Right.
It is a stalemated war.
So it stays right where it is.
It stays right where it is.
And who does that benefit? Russia?
Totally. It's a war of attrition, and in a war of attrition, who wins? The guy
What should Biden have done not to get us to this point,
I may be in the lone person on this panel, but I do think that we can support Ukraine. I take a nuanced view at this, where a lot of that spending goes to humanitarian support in Ukraine to pay for teacher pensions, their small businesses. I'm okay with sending munitions as long as we can.
Well, let me ask you this, because we're running short on time, if you can believe it, because we've had a long conversation. But, Senator, bottom line here is not whether or not we support Ukraine. We support people all over the world. Our hearts are with them. The bottom line is, can we win? And win means help them win.
Right.
Okay, bottom line, Harris, is
we can't win.
Well, we can't with this president, let me tell you, because we need a commander-in-chief that is willing to show the American people how the Ukrainians are going to win. We need a strategy.
I haven't heard anybody say how they're going to win.
Let me say
Nobody
this.
thinks you can
as
win
we
this
saw
war.
with President Reagan and as we saw with President Trump, these wars, like what's happening in Ukraine, you win them before they happen.
Exactly.
And that's how we should try to win what's happening in China.
Exactly.
Well, and you and I
Look,
talked early on, Senator, day two of the conflict, of the war. It was then a conflict between Russia and Iran and Ukraine, that we needed to do more at the beginning.
Absolutely.
And we didn't do enough. All right. I hate to do it. We got to go. I want to say thank you to Military in Focus, our very first roundtable on a discussion like this. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Outnumbered is next.